Hello, I'm Rod Peppiatt from the Uniting Church in Blackburn, Victoria, meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. And we continue our journey past Easter. And my focus reflects that today, thinking about, well, what does Easter mean when Easter, the holiday, or Easter, the season, is nearly over? A pastor in the United States tells the story of the woman who came to shake his hand at the end of the Easter service. "I've never seen such a crowd in church," she said. He didn't know her, but apparently she was very impressed by the number of people who'd gathered for worship on Easter Sunday. But then, as she was shaking his hand and moving towards the door, she added, "Do you think it'll make a difference?" Now the pastor grabbed her hand so she couldn't let go because he was curious, and he said, "What do you mean? Will what make a difference?" "Easter," she said. "Will Easter make the difference for all these people? Or will life tomorrow be the same as it was yesterday?" That woman's question, I think, is a profound one. Does Easter make any difference for all these people? Or will life today be different from what it was yesterday? Does Easter make a difference in your life or mine? Have the weeks since Easter been any different for you from the weeks that went before? How did what we did together at Easter help people to grow in faith and experience God present in their life, however we understand and name God? I love the gospel stories of Easter and resurrection. They make me wonder. I wonder how I'd respond to them and how I do so now, how I respond to that news of resurrection. And what difference would it make, and does it make? Because it should make a difference to me and to us. And I know that should can be a bit of a tyrant of a word, and I try to use it fairly sparingly. But in this case, I think it's a good word. Because the stories handed down to us make it pretty clear that Easter did make a difference in the lives of the followers of Jesus. Their lives were touched by new hope, by new purpose and new life. Have our lives been touched like that? I hope so. But it's sometimes hard to know, isn't it? Easter hasn't kind of been injected with all of the sentiment that surrounds Christmas, where people talk about wars stopping or miracles happening or families getting along with each other because it's Christmas. And I think that's a good thing. But it still distressed me that the news I saw over Easter was so much about war in Ukraine and Gaza and about gun violence in the US and all of those kinds of stories with sort of an afterthought on the news. Oh yeah, people went to church. And then of course all that was followed by the terrible violence in Sydney in this last week. I try to hold all of that in tension with what I believe about why Easter happened. With my belief that hope can be stronger than fear, with life can be stronger than death. But at times I find myself sitting with Thomas in wanting proof that anything has changed at all. But then I return to the stories and I see that the people there faced similar, they're different, but similar challenges. Because Easter and resurrection, however we understand that, didn't change the external situation of the friends and disciples of Jesus. They were still under Roman rule, with all of the disadvantages and perhaps dubious advantages that implied. Life didn't become easier overnight. In fact, in many ways, it became harder. And externally, very little was different. But in the lives of those first Christians, everything had changed. They lived with an understanding that the Spirit and the way of Jesus lived on, and that transformed their reality, or at least how they responded to the way things were around them. And gradually, very slowly, they began to change their world. What they knew and what they had experienced of Jesus in his lifetime, together with what they came to understand of his death and resurrection, gave them hope that his way was right, gave them the courage to see and join in his way in the world, the courage to let go of what had been, the courage to let go of the time while he was with them and to look to new ways, the courage to acknowledge both death and resurrection. There's a story told of a children's ward that was the most depressing ward in the whole hospital, where the children had little hope. And that little hope was reflected in the faces of the nurses and those who, nurses requested other assignments. And even the patients' families and their friends found it difficult to be there. But one man changed that by dressing up as a clown. The nurses were a bit nervous. Some of the parents were offended, but the children laughed. And they sensed that the clown loved them from his heart, and he offered them something. What he offered was hope that today wasn't the end of the world. He had a powerful influence on the children because he gave them hope. And the nurses began to work with the clown. They began to laugh and smile. The children began to love the nurses and parents, and they in turn began to love the clown. One day the clown didn't come. His life had failed. But in that hospital ward, he lives on in his smile, which is still there. And because someone else took up his clown suit and his smile and brings that hope, that love. And for me, dare I say it, that's where Easter can make a difference. When lives are changed, when people pick up again the way of resurrection, while still being brave enough to sit with the reality of death. Maybe it doesn't change the world's big picture or what we see of it. We have to keep praying and hoping that it might, but it can change the way that we respond. Maybe in being the clown for the world, in spreading the life and the purpose that gives us hope, in working whatever way we can, wherever we are, whether we think they're big things or small things, in living as people with hope, even when the world is hard for us or those we love. And much as we wish it might, this doesn't change the realities of the world very often. Lousy things still happen to good people. There's brokenness in the world, and Christians aren't immune to that. But in the midst of that, we believe there is hope. We must believe. The way of Jesus the Christ holds both death and resurrection. Both are real. And if we look, I think we might see living proof of this all around us. In people who've felt the forgiving power, the hope that they don't have to live with guilt. In people who have sorrow, who have experienced grief, and yet have the hope that there is more than simply pain in this world. in people who live with illness and have the hope that in the Spirit of God there might be healing and the courage to live, whatever healing looks like. In people with terrible situations going on all around them, who seem to be far more concerned about helping others than helping themselves. These things reflect the way of Jesus, the way of hope, the way of resurrection. We could go on, but I think you get the picture. Easter can make a difference because fundamentally it's about life which embraces hope and change and renewal and courage and strength as the way of God shown in Jesus. I want to finish with another story. It's an old story from the great storyteller Robert Louis Stevenson. It's like this. The boy from the country came to London to visit his grandparents. One night, it was getting dark, he sat outside on the front steps of his grandparents' house and he watched the sights of the city. And as he watched, he saw a man coming down the street. The man would stop at each corner and pause beside the lampposts. Then a round globe of light would burst forth through the darkness. And as the boy watched with ever-increasing wonder, the light began to change the street, and the street gradually changed from night to a place of light. And he got so excited that he raced inside and called out, "Grandmother, grandmother, come and see. There's a man outside poking holes in the darkness." Easter should make a difference, especially when we remember that the one who calls us to go on poking holes is also the one we call the light of the world. Blessings.